Welcome to another Torah study here at NETIVonline.org. We really appreciate you joining our class each week. Make time to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would really, really appreciate it. Today, we're going to be looking at Parshas Korach, specifically Korach's rebellion, a perspective on leadership, humility, and divine order. Now, in a society that prizes personal autonomy and self-expression, the story of Korach seems countercultural. Why should a man be swallowed alive for claiming that all the nation is holy? This question touches the heart of our modern spiritual confusion. When is rebellion righteous? And when is it rooted in ego? Our goal today is to explore this parsha, which teaches the nations about humility, divine authority, and the spiritual danger of misusing truth for personal gain. Here's a brief overview of the story. Korach, a Levite, leads a rebellion against Moses and Aaron, accusing them of nepotism and of elitism. Korach stated, "You take too much upon yourself, for all the congregation is holy." Now, in a brief overview of the verse, you would think, oh, he's being compassionate like Yithro and concerned for his son-in-law. You're doing too much. You can't do this all by yourself. No, this was not Korach's argument at all. His was totally driven by another source, and we will examine this in a moment. That's found in Numbers, the 16th chapter, verse 3. God responds immediately with judgment. The earth swallows Korach and his followers, destroys them, family, and all the people that joined in. Aaron's rod miraculously blossoms to validate God's position. Here are some of the core themes from rabbinic sources. Rebellion disguised as holiness or moral outrage, a very important idea to consider. Korach's argument appears spiritually correct. The entire congregation is holy. Rashi, his commentary on Numbers, the 16th chapter, verse 1, Korach was driven by jealousy of Eliphaz's appointment. In Midrash Tanchuma, Korach wore a garment made entirely of techelet, blue thread, that mocked Moses' law that even such a garment required tzitzit. He challenged the logic of halakha to delegitimize Moses' authority. So what is the lesson that we take away from our rabbinical sources? First, truth must be aligned with humility and divine authority. The Mishnah in Avot 5:17 distinguishes between two types of argument, one argument for the sake of heaven and the other one that doesn't endure. Wisdom is not only about asking the right questions, but asking why we ask the question, a self-examination. This is sort of the ethos of the righteous of the nations, that we check our motives, that we make sure that our motives are in right order before we present a question or an idea. Next, we're going to examine the role of authority in divine order. In Bidmidbar Rabbah 18:8, Korach challenged the divine hierarchy, not out of principle, but out of his ego. Sanhedrin 1:10, anyone who disputes the authority of his teacher is as if he disputes the divine presence. Now, I want to make this statement. It's very important. Whenever you have a teacher, such as a rabbi that is your teacher, there's a difference between a challenging question and a dispute. And if your question is a challenging question, which is honest and pure, then there's nothing wrong with it. But make sure that you check your ego at the door and ask the question, why am I asking this? Tosefta, Sanhedrin 13:5 says, Korach denied the uniqueness of Moses' prophetic role. What is the wisdom here? The 7 Noahide laws are actually part of the universal covenant, but they are also given by divine authority, not man-made ethics. True righteousness is submission to divine structure, even when we don't fully understand it. Now, the role of the sages and teachers and tradition is essential in our observation of these laws and learning, even for the righteous of the nations to preserve Torah values. Let's compare ego versus service. Korach was a Levite, already elevated among Israel. He wanted more. He wasn't satisfied. He wanted to have the big boss's job. Korach 17a in the Zohar says, Korach desired the priesthood not to serve, but to rule. Isn't that interesting? Doesn't that sound like most of our society today? They challenge authority for the purpose of getting ahead. Rambam states that Korach masked his ambition under a cloak of equality. We're all equal. We're all prophets. We're all holy. Mishnah, Avot 4:1 states, who is honored? He who honors others. Even outside the Jewish people, the challenge is the same. Is our spiritual pursuit about serving God or serving ourselves? The people of the nations are called the pillars of ethical monotheism, not just moral beings. Humility is a part and the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 11:2. This story reminds us that spiritual growth demands constant vigilance over our ego, constant self-examination, constantly checking ourselves to find out what is our motive. So what endures? Aaron's rod. It blossoms, number 17, a symbol of life from submission, not rebellion. The story concludes not with punishment, but with affirmation. Only by following divine order can blessing actually emerge in our life. Rambam is quoted in Hilchot Malachim 8:11, a Gentile who follows divine law because he recognizes the wisdom of the Torah is called Chesed Umot Olam, a pious one of the nations. Now let's wrap this up. Parsha Korach is a call to clarity and to clarify our spiritual motives. Seek divine truth over personal agenda, and to anchor ourselves in humility and submission to God's order. Rebellion against divine authority, even when dressed in a spiritual cloak, spiritual language, leads to destruction and chaos. But submission with humility leads to blossoming, just like Aaron's rod. We, as the people of the nations who are trying and attempting to live at the highest level of illumination, we all want to blossom. We all want to do well. And how do we do that? Is by wisdom and understanding the importance of being under authority of the Holy One, blessed be He. So let's look at a couple of questions to ask ourselves. What areas in our lives, even in our pursuit of truth, our ego might be disguising itself as righteousness? How can we balance personal growth with divine alignment to authority and tradition? So let's summarize this lesson. Korach's message sounds holy, but his motives were absolutely impure. Rabbinic sources universally point to ego and ambition as the real driver behind Korach's questioning and dispute. Authority, when rooted in God, is not oppression, but order. Remember that authority, even within our government, is not oppression, but order. We must develop discernment, humility, and alignment with the will of heaven, not just what feels right or not what you think is right. This story isn't about silencing questions, it's about purifying our questions. May Hashem help each one of us to purify ourselves, purify our motives, to be authentic before God and before man. And may we all prepare ourselves for the soon coming redemption that is coming to all of the world. Light and illumination, transformation is coming. Get prepared. It's happening today.